after, the last 2-3 years of him running things. And Gurmeet has set some very ambitious, very good, healthy targets. And I'm sure he will drive those things as we go along. But constant, one glue that connects all of these things is this one person called Dr. Jain. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here. All of you have in some ways found that. And I think, to my mind, I'll stop with this in about a minute or so. And I'm sharing this, hoping that you all resonate with that value or that emotion. What was it that struck a personal chord with all of us so deeply that we continue to regard that man with as much fondness, if not admiration? If you reflect on the lasting footprint he left on your mind, as I do, quite often, it'll probably be for what he did to invoke that pioneering spirit that dominates your work as leaders. All of you, individually, if you look at it, you're all leaders. I mean, I can say that of every one of us here. He infused in his every chat, if you think of those little things that he told you, sometimes in a washroom when you met him, sometimes on the stage, sometimes he's, you happen to be sitting next to him in a session or some such thing. He always infused his chat with a deep sense of urgency, but that we all do. A lot of us do that sense of urgency. But what he also did was that he imbued in us a sense of destiny. He emphasized that freedom we enjoyed to choose our destiny rather than have it chosen for us. And that is about the only thing I want to say. There's a lot more things I would have said. I've examined my own emotions, carefully, since I spent so much time with Payal and with the trust and with the work that we do here. He reminds me of another amazing man, that man, John F. Kennedy, who was there for only 19 months as a president. And in May 1961, or some such thing, this guy says that the US should commit itself to achieving the goal before this decade is out. He says this, before this decade is out, of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the earth. Somebody else wrote those lines for him. He had a very well-known US writer as a speechwriter. But the point is that the man could say that. And in 2010, if SRP was here, he would remember that. If Srinivas is here, you would remember that day when I believe Srinivas was called by Dr. Jain into some meeting. And then Jain Saab says, hey, well, this metro thing, they've asked for this. There's so many square feet that we can do. Srinivas's immediate response is, well, sir, but the fee structure is not very good. Immediate response, doesn't matter. Give it to them at 25,000 rupees. It will help us enlarge our footprint, he says. And at that point of time, Srinivas will tell you there's more than, he's not here, unfortunately, it was 240 million square feet. He was thinking of 1 billion square feet at that time. How did he do that? In fact, we all met, Gurmeet, in 2010-11, when we were meeting him, in either the Congress or sometimes over telephone calls, when all the youngsters from IGBC would also be there. He would say some few things, he will go away. How did he engineer the process in his head? I mean, look at Tyag today. Tyag is just now, maybe 2 months ago, launched something at a 300 crore project size in Telangana. So, when you start something like this as a leader, there is a process that happens in your mind. But when you do something at a vision and as a movement, it's a whole different ball game. And that is what set that man apart from everybody else. And when he said that at that point of time, everyone said, theek hai, some 1 billion people, nice idea, emotion is right. But no one actually, honestly, no one believed. I mean, you could touch your heart, you'll know that. JK had just then come in. Jit Kumar had come in, I think, in 2011 or 12. And it happened. It happened not because of one person, as he would be the first person to admit that we all did it together. But it happened with that spark. I'll stop there. This is about reminiscences, but to me, it's not just about reminiscences. It's about what Gurmeet has got as a fantastic challenge before him. He's 20 years younger to Suresh. He's 25 years younger to Dr. Prem Jain. He has it's like the edge of the cliff and the world before him. Now he has to see what he can do to shape India's destiny and to go back to those things that Jain Saab did to all of us. Choose our destiny rather than have it chosen for us. I hear from a lot of the leaders in IPA of how the innards of IPA are being engineered by Gurmeet's simple, I will say, very Sardari ways of doing things. There's a certain intuitive element to all leaders, instinctive element to all leaders. Gurmeet, maybe you should speak because you have now taken over as chairperson. You have always accepted him as your guru and mentor. You have known him from 1992. That's 30 years you have known him. 30 years, right? You were what, 28, 29 at the time. Like with women, I shouldn't ask your age. But the thing is that, you were not even 30 at the time. So you had a long, long, wonderful innings and of knowing him, sometimes as a client, sometimes as a, not as a client, but as a relationship where you had to also deliver things for him. And then, of course, you saw that brush with greatness that he could offer us. Gurmeet.
Well, when I met Dr. Jain in 1992, I must tell all of you, it was very difficult even at that time to meet him. And I had to send the facts from our collaborators in UK, IMI Yorkshire. When their MD was coming to India, to Mumbai, I said, you come down to Delhi because I want to meet you. 91, 92. There was no email at that time. There were only faxes. And that's how I got my foot through to Dr. Jain's office in Masjid Mode, GK3. And then there was no looking back because somehow Dr. Jain also developed a fondness with me, for me, I'm sorry. And I spent hours and hours with him, sometimes traveling in a car, 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours. In fact, in his last few years, I was in his Mercedes and he wouldn't let me stand on the street because my car had not come. And he said, no, Gurmeet, I'll wait with you. I said, no, sir, I'll stand. But the car will come in 5 minutes, 10 minutes. And he said, no. And then he told me that, this Mercedes, when I was very young, I aspired to have this Merc. And Payal and Manish love good cars. Okay. But now I have no use of this. Okay. By that time, he had gotten over his feeling of wanting things. And, I told him so many times that, Dr. Jain, your trouser doesn't look good. You keep on giving it to the hotel to iron it. And it's become as shiny as a raincoat, the exact words I used. And he said, no, Gurmeet, I'm happy. His cream shirts, those trousers. In fact, his old maroon coat, and Payal insisted that she makes a velvet maroon coat for him. And he said, Payal has made this for me. He was very proud of this, Payal, by the way. He used to share a lot of things, personal things with me in his later days. And I also prayed for him once. I do a Japsa pray every morning for half an hour every day. And I did 101 for him, each take 15 minutes. And after his death, I had given him this prayer book with my writing, Dr. Jain, this will protect you, blah, blah, blah. And after his death, Payal found this prayer book in one of his drawers, well kept and well revered. Payal still has it with her. She carries it with her now. So there's been a long innings with Dr. Jain. The ethics that he has taught me, the humility that he has taught me, and the fact how to bind people together. I would have not known any of you except Dr. Sumani because of IPA, okay, and plumbing, unless Dr. Jain did not introduce all of us. And he made us into a family. If he had a vision, he would convert it to a mission. Sadhu was there from the beginning of the green building movement. We were all there. The first meeting we had at the Oberoi, Bombay, Padhu, if you remember, when Ravi Raheja was also there. And this 20,000 square feet building and 1 billion. And suddenly when we achieved 1 square feet for every person in India, suddenly changed to 10 billion and 1 billion per year. Very ambitious. Even his company Spectral, from where to where, I used to be criticized by most of the plumbing consultants that Dr. Jain is not a plumbing consultant, and why you run after him and why you are with him all the time. He was doing more plumbing than anybody in India. When he was doing 5-star hotels, he used to call me, Gurmeet, my 100 5-star hotels that I'm doing is become 97, 3 have got completed. I need to get 3 more. So whether it was the Taj Group, the Hilton, the Novotel Sofitel, the Oberoi Trident, your Wildflower Hall, Vanya Vilas, Raj Vilas, all the villas, all the 7-star luxury hotels, all done by his company. Amazing, I'm telling you. And there is not one person in the construction industry or MEP industry that can ever say anything wrong against Dr. his humility, the way his approach. He would spend hours, whether it's 1 hour, 2 hour. Today consultants. I'm sorry, Ashish, you are also there, and Sheetal is also there. They look at their watch because time is money. Dr. Jain was never like that. He would give in his heart to a project, I'm telling you. Heart and soul, and make sure that it well. He started introducing me as Mr. Copper. And whether it was Sanjay Singh of DLF or Ranka Saab of IRIO, he would say, this is Mr. Copper, and anything you need in your site, he's the man to get in touch with. And he really promoted my business, me. And I'm telling you, as my business grew, I got very egoistic for some time. And Dr. Jain brought me back to Mother Earth. He really spoke to me and imbibed this humility and the fact. I want to tell you one thing before I finish. He has taught us one thing, that one day we will all be memories. And so let's do the best we can. Chandra, back to you.
Absolutely. Would you remember, Gurmeet, or anyone else can talk about this? Somewhere he landed with these 7 shirts, and he said, I'm not going to secure any more shirts in my life. Who can talk about that?
And not white shirts, cream shirts with black pants.
It wasn't 7, it was 3.
3. It came down.
And cream shirts. Not even white.
And that's it.
I gave him, I came from China, Shanghai to Delhi for his birthday, 26th Jan. And so I went to, he always wore a tie. Even when he came to my house for a dinner or two, he wore a tie.
And he has 2 ties.
And he has that red tie, which he loves all the time. And so I went to Satya Paul and I bought him 8 ties. And Hari, I asked him after 4 months, you have never worn even one of those. And Satya Paul are expensive ties. Right. He says, Gurmeet, I don't need them. I gave them away. I'm sorry. That is what his life was.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Right. In fact, Pyle, I must tell you, at least twice I have told him, why are you wearing this dreadful color for the coat? And you would give a beaming 1000-watt smile.
That was
Pyle gave.
That was the only color he wanted.
For him, it was not the color, nothing. Pyle gave it to me. That's all it was.
No, but he wanted that burgundy. That was the only part of
and that velvet.
No, that one was velvet, but it used to be a burgundy in a cream shirt and a black pant, and that was just universal. And I would fight that it's becoming shiny and it's burnt, and he would not agree till it was in tatters. That's when he would allow me to change it.
Generally, you have long memories.
And I must tell you, there was one particular shade of maroon. It was not that any maroon. So whenever we had to do his jackets, if Pyle, then we would really look for that particular maroon. And it's not that it can't become darker or lighter. And then, but what, as Pyle said, if there were 3 shirts, if a 4th shirt comes, he always gave it to, there were people, or either ties, whatever. But so it was always, he lived with those.
Pyle, can you tell all of us what you eventually did with that, let's say, Mercedes car?
Oh, actually, one of somebody who also thinks of him as a father wanted the car, and he said, I have so many memories of traveling with him in this car. So Avinash wanted the car, and he said, I will take it, and I will take it with the driver, and I will keep all the, so he uses it. I see it all the time. So the car is still very much there. One sort of luxury we forced upon him, which he never wanted, complained no end, but he did enjoy the fact that some moments he would have and he enjoyed it. It was
how amazing it can get, that the man is around everywhere with everybody. In the last 3 days, I think Gurmeet mentioned it yesterday or day before. He said, wherever he is, and he went on with whatever he wanted to say. He's there, and that kind of thing does not happen to too many people. Jaimini, you have memories. Tell us about
Dr. Harian and I there for a minute. I just want to put a very interesting fact here, Ashish, here. We spoke about the tie. And I just want to mention about the tie. He's the man who got the HVAC industry to wear the tie. Just because he started wearing, and he was a father figure icon to a lot of us, I saw a lot of consultants, a lot of engineers, a lot of people started wearing tie after that. And interestingly, after he's gone, the ties are gone. That's the impact he had on the industry.
My God. Yeah, but you're right, Ashish. To simply see him in that 7 hours, 8 hours, how those meetings went. Mahabalipuram, you remember, warm, humid. There was no air conditioning because we had kept all the doors open in that
Right.
sort of river. The man is still wearing his tie. He's still got his jacket on. But
That is true.
There is a sense of dignity that he brought to them. Everybody else will be wearing slacks and shirts and whatever. But
Right.
he's not going to, he will not change anything that he.
No doubt about that. And
Yeah,
incidentally, I went out and I searched for that same maroon color and I bought a coat of that color, which I wear at times.
Oh, I have a box full of them, Ashish. I used to keep buying and storing them, and he would say I would only take one at a time. When it was literally torn and in tatters, where the knot comes, it gets worn out. And so I have a box full of them because I would only give him one at a time. You're welcome to have all of them.
Our biggest amazement was when he started wearing black suits. At the later part, he started with black. And we were like amazed. Where did this black?
Because Delhi became so cold. Eventually, the last few years, Delhi was so cold. So there was no choice but to wear something warmer than just the pants.
And I'll tell you one more interesting thing, Pal. The small bag that he used to carry for his tours, that small bag he had. And then one day I found him with a new bag. I said, sir, what happened? Where's the old bag gone? He said it was time to give away that old bag. It was very green time. So I remember time when he also that the suitcase, the small taxi that he used to carry.
Yeah.
Right. Wonderful. I'll come back to you, Ashish. You carry a lot of memories. Not today. I'm saying within the next 3-4 months, we'll put together all these little things, and I will design something that can, resonate with a lot of people. Jaimini, you have to tell us. You go back a long way with him too.
Yes, I do. It is well, not as long as
But
Gurmeet,
that's-
a few years short of that. See, I first met him in 1995 when he was heading Spectral. Of course, he owned and he created Spectral, and we were doing the first of the Vilases, the Raj Vilas.
Mhm.
What struck me most about him was, okay, now let's talk about the fact that it being the first villas and a 40-acre property with cottages spread all over, and what Mr. Oberoi wanted was top the line. All his consultants used to go for a ride in their thinking, whether it was structural, whether it was
मेरी गाड़ी की चाबी ले ले यार तू चला रहा है ना
Please mute, I'll mute him. Rajneesh, you have to-
sorry, please be on mute.
Sorry, go on, please. Go on.
Yeah, but he was always, and watch out, MEP was, he had to deal with each and everything in those 40 cottages and numerous swimming pools and a huge area around. He never lost his cool. He always found a solution for everything. And I realized that Mr. Oberoi, he was, I wouldn't call him arrogant, but he was a very heavy person, Mr. PRS Oberoi. But at all these meetings, which were at least about 25, 30, he would always ask Dr. Jain and myself to sit down next to him. And then there was no way that other consultants could come in. But this was one thing that he had a smile, an infectious smile. He had a way out for everything.
How did you meet him? Sorry, Jaimini. How did you meet him first time, and what was that impression that you carried at that time? First time.
I was introduced by Sanjay Batra, and he said that was over at the beginning of the Raj Vilas. And over the couple of
you set your sights on him the very first time. What happened to you? Do you remember?
Yes, his humility. He was absolutely humble. He had a way out for each and everything. Yeah. There was everyone had solution, and MEP, whether it be air conditioning,
that always happened with him. Yeah.
He was always there. He never lost his cool. He never complained. And Mr. Oberoi would always look at him with a lot of respect. You could feel that, and that's what amazed me about him. Later on, I met him in a couple of meetings, and I always had this urge to go and touch his feet, which I did right till the end. Of course, he would never let you reach that. He would just hold you.
Ask Gurmeet, he will tell you.
Yeah.
He always convert it to something else.
Yeah. But another thing, see, his solutions, for instance, just a few, 2 or 3 years before he unfortunately passed away, Ajay Shriram, our friend who was also the chairman of CII, he had a problem regarding his Finestas. And there was Mr. Raghupati and there was Mr. Venkat Giri on the phone, and he and I was traveling in a car together. And they said, sir, we can't approve it. We can't. He says, why are you closing down an issue? Ajay, he does not realize right now that chlorine content will not be, this thing. We have to find a way out for him. How he continues. Fenesta is a very good thing and which has to be used. Let's find it. So you see, he was always at it. The other was his fondness for children, his grandchildren. Of course, Payal too, he remembered left and right, center, but so much so that when he met my daughter at my house for the first time, he narrated all about his 2 grandchildren. And he tells her, look, my 2 grandchildren are studying in Singapore. You and your husband, you have 2 sons. And I have, Payal has 2 sons. So 6 months, you should, or 3 months, you should go and live. You're educated, you're this thing, you worked. So you be in Singapore and the rest, you be here and look after his business. And then he goes and looks after his business. And he was so infectious that Kangan really started believing that he has to send her boys. And, that's the sort of a person he was. And his love for children. There's so much tons you could speak about.
I know. I know it's setting off something else in my head, and we'll talk about that. Madhu, I'll come to you first, then Tyag, and then Ashok Lal. And you're all different human beings. Each of you inhabit some very, very completely different spaces. Yours, Madhu, was a very, shall we say, a cerebral relation. You had spent 10 years between the US and here. Then you suddenly hear one day of this wonderful thing that, that Clinton is trying to do here. You still don't know somebody called Dr. Jain. A whole lot of other things happen, and you're only connecting with those people in CII first, and then with some SRP and a few other people. Somewhere down the line, you also, shall we say, run into Dr. Jain. Good evening, Sureshji. Thank you for being here. So when you got to meeting him.
Good evening. Good evening.
Yeah, good evening, Suresh.
Yeah. What a pleasure.
Yeah. No, your network is low. The VSV network is low. So, Padhu, what between 2001 or 2002 to say 2004? Padhu?
Catch me at the earliest before I get come up.
You're right, Hari. I met Dr. Jain a very few times, and really it was in connection with the green building movement. But let me kind of step back from that. In 2000, President Clinton visited India, and at that time, a decision was taken that USAID can help support setting up a green business center in Hyderabad. And in that context, I met up with CII, and we moved forward with that particular decision, which resulted in a decision to set up this 20,000 square feet building. But in the run-up to the design of the building, it was important that the US Green Building Council should be involved.
All that, yes.
Provide some kind of a support and so on. And I invited the Green Building Council, and Kathy Williams came by, and at that workshop we had Dr. Jain was there. That's the first time I had seen him, but he struck me and my colleagues as somebody who was not only very knowledgeable but also had a vision. So we felt that we needed to kind of be guided by an iconic person like him. So I met up with him at the Spectral office in 2001. At that time, the IGBC was not in a gleam in one's eye. It wasn't not something that was on our radar screen. But we were interested. When I say we, I mean we in USAID were interested to know whether we should put in dollars into this particular program of promoting green buildings in India. What is the market? What is the potential? And so on. And I felt that, Dr. Jain would be the person to talk to. And I met up with him. It was an amazing meeting. It was a meeting for only about half an hour. But in that half an hour, I saw two particular strands of his personality. One was visionary, a visionary of the kind you rarely come across in the kind of people I had met previously. The two was optimism. The glass was always half full for him. And in that half an hour, he explained why the green building movement is extremely important and why it's going to grow and why we in USAID should be providing the kind of support that we should be doing. And that actually set into pace the program, which then resulted in the green building movement and so on and so forth. That was one particular meeting. I've not met him very many times, but the few times I did meet him, and I met him at certain occasions when we were on the fork in the road in terms of our program, you could be very sure that he could give you a sense of direction, a sense of consolation that, yeah, things will take time, but it'll happen. And that's what happened. So, and in fact, if I might add, I had in my book, Hari, you're very familiar with that. We have a chapter on great buildings, and there is a section on Dr. Jain, and that kind of, one can have a book on Dr. Jain, So a section in a chapter on Dr. Jain was this least I could do, but that kind of encapsulates, the kind of regard we had for him and the kind of support we got from him and the kind of vision that he had. And more importantly, as I said, his optimism. It was extremely infectious. And that actually held me in good stead personally, because I had to really commit USAID resources for a program which the government of India wasn't too excited about. At that time, the government of India did not know about this, did not actually care too much about it. And they wanted us to support the government programs of the Bureau of Energy Efficiency and so on, which we supported in parallel. But this was a private sector driven program. And we had to stick our necks out using bilateral funds to support it, but that's another story. Right, but Dr. Jain played a key role.
Got that.
Yeah. So make the planning and move forward.
Yeah, the first time you met him, and that one defining moment that you found someday when you were with him.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Hari. Thank you, Payal, for inviting me. So my association with him was in late 80s, early 90s as a air conditioning professional. Okay, much before my involvement in Indian Green Building Council. So I was a young person. I was not technically sound, and I used to meet him with biggies in Voltas. I was in Voltas at that point of time. Now, my most part of, he used to attend also the annual sessions of Voltas. Later on in Blue Star, he used to address the, he was seen as a key speaker in the annual get-togethers of, the sales team or the projects team. Now, my very first impression is that for him, a CEO or a junior most person is one and the same, which I had seen, when he deals with Jamshed Godrej in Green Building Council, or a dignitary, a VIP, or a small manufacturer who is part of it. He didn't differentiate at all. He had the same humility in dealing across the level. So that is the impression I had at that point of time. I was not technically sound, and we used to go to him with a great deal of fear. I used to have fear accompanying the meetings. This is one part of it. The second one is, normally, Ashish is aware of it, the site coordination, the jobs used to go wrong. The projects used to get messed up. The architects used to be very tough in pulling up the vendors. I have never seen Dr. Jain being angry or cool. So I remember this there is anger And he never, I have not come across, in fact, I won't even say, even my father I have seen, all of individual, I have angry is Dr. Now, I will also, I also want to part, you captured the essence of it. You were trying to discover that what makes Dr. Jain that unique personality, which last night, I mean, that is what makes him, what is that unique thing. So we may converge eventually into the same thought as you said, but I felt that he, to what I felt eventually, but two distinct qualities. Mr. mentioned about that green building movement to be brought in. But I've seen him larger than life goals that even for the Indian C&R industry, he had that larger than life vision. Okay, even in green building, that he had that inner vision that we can take on US. We can the world #1. So there was that kind of conviction in him. Now he had the view of future. Now, I recall the moments that was in green building council itself, defining moment of USGBC trying to go on their one important thing within CII, know in the CII leadership what kind of decision or the position we have to take. And at point of time, I was operating on an IGBC, one part of it. The second one is the TADE versus green rating system of IGBC. There used to be a tension at some point of time with regard to how we position ourselves. Even at that moment, he was very clear that we will come out victoriously. We will be able to do that. Now, the one is that vision and the conviction. The second part is believing that that we will be able to do it through a team only. And important leadership quality that you will see the chapter members, how he rallied them to feel proud. And most importantly, I'll tell you that when I was heading the Education Awareness Committee, he made me feel that I achieved it. He never took credit for that at all. He made you feel that you did it. Okay. Lastly, that sums up actually. The thing is that a new frontiers of leadership, a visionary leadership, and that is what defines Dr. Jain. And he is one of the extraordinary leaders.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Payal, come back to you. He said, that, well, he never saw, nobody saw him angry or whatever.
I was going to say
Can I just make a comment here? I think since Dr. Tyagarajan is speaking, Ashish again, apologies for butting in. I just want to mention here.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, please.
Okay. I just want to mention that Dr. Jain had a special love for Blue Star.
For
Blue Star.
Blue
Many
Star.
of you would not know this.
No,
He
that
always had a very,
that is thanks to Hiru Jangyani, I think.
that is correct. So he always had a very special place for Blue Star. And he said, I admire their culture. Nobody left Blue Star. So the people who grew in Blue Star right from I would say from beginning till the end, they retired from there.
Right.
And he always said, if a company has a culture like this, that talks volume about the company. That is one. Number two, when it came to any critical project, he always went to Blue Star. I remember the All India Institute of Medical Sciences, Delhi, there was a renovation to be done in a working operation theaters, working hospital. The chillers had to be changed. He handpicked Blue Star and he said they are the only ones they can do that. So that's the kind of love and he always admired this company. And Payal is right in saying a lot of credit goes to Jangyani also because.
Okay. Ashish, then let me ask you this question. You have seen him in some very stressed times also when barely he could manage to pay salaries and so on, 2008, 9, 10, and so on, right? You were at work with him. Have you ever seen him even annoyed with something that went wrong? A colleague did something that, got the client a little unhappy. Has that happened to you, Ashish? Or have you seen him even mildly annoyed?
Sure. So I would agree that he never lost his temper. And, a lot of us, including Joe Biden, can afford to swear at times. Not that man, you could not even think about it.
Of course.
But he had to vent it out. So his vent used to be like, without getting angry, but just saying that, "Arey, kya kar diya aapne?" That kind of thing. Kaise kar sakte aap ye? That was his style of saying ki, you've done it. So one of the moments when
your voice is going fainter, Ashish.
Okay, so I would just say it again. So one of our colleagues was working with us. While he was working, he branched out. So he was very disappointed because he felt that colleague was very close to him. So I did see a moment of that disappointment. Those moments of disappointment I've seen where he felt betrayed.
Got it.
But otherwise, I don't think I ever saw him angry.
Fair enough. Thank you, Ashish. I was very intrigued with what Tyag said, and very nice one. Even last year, I remember somebody saying this about, and Tyag also said something about, how meeting him, meant a great deal of fear. I'm just quoting Tyagarajan just now. Keep that in mind. I don't want him to speak about that just now. I will turn to Ashok Lal. You came from a space very different from his. And of course, he had to deal with a lot of your species, because he's coming from the engineering space, and you are coming from the other one of volume and aesthetics and so on. What did that mean to you, Ashok Lal?
Well, I'm one of the very few lucky ones amongst the group that is gathered here to have known him in a capacity as you might say, a student, because I joined Mr. Stein's office in 1974, where Dr. Jain was looking after the air conditioning department in Mr. Stein's office. And I was a young man in my mid-20s, thrown into the deep end, given a lot of responsibilities, asked to do very complicated things. And I would just, I had some very complicated interiors to design for Citibank and for the United States Embassy renovation work. Very complicated interiors. And they involved a lot of coordination of the air conditioning and MEP. So I would just go and sit at Dr. Jain's table, sit opposite him. And I tell you, he is such a brilliant teacher. He was such a brilliant teacher. I learned all my first principles, air conditioning, from him. And those first principles stay with me today. It is on the foundation of the knowledge that he imparted in very conversational terms, looking at some drawings and issues in front of us, that I imbibed so much. And that foundation of knowledge is something on which now I have built a specialized practice in integrated design leading to net zero office buildings. And I would say the foundation is laid by the attitude, the manner with which he conveyed simple principles of knowledge across the table.
Ashok,
also,
a whole lot
when
of
he went on to teach, he went on to teach at SPA for several years, and used to take the air conditioning course at the SPA undergraduate architectural courses, right?
I attended a couple of those classes.
You did that, and I also taught at SPA for a while, and I met a lot of students who have attended his classes, and that was one class that nobody bunked, right? That was one class that nobody bunked, because the way he put things across was so clearly structured that it would just sink into you as the classes went. And then here's the miracle. everybody in the class would get fantastic marks. Well, he himself was the examiner and used to also check the papers or whatever, the answer sheets, etc. So I asked him once, Dr. Jain, you're very generous with your marking with your students. He simply smiled and he said, they deserve it. They have understood the basics and they're going to learn further. They deserve good marks. With a smile, he would say that, So I've seen that side of him as a kind of I've been a student, I've been a shagird. When I went out and developed my own practice as an architect, I would keep coming back to him. After ISHRE was formed, I happened to meet him at one occasion. So he said, Ashok, क्या कर रहे हो आजकल? मैंने कहा कुछ नहीं, मैं आर्किटेक्चर हूँ, आर्किटेक्ट का काम करता हूँ, and we're doing some very nice work. So he said, aren't you a member of ISHRE? I said, I'm an architect. Can I become a member of ISHRE? He said, why the hell not? अरे कल आप अपना application भेजिए, आपको वो. So I was the first non-architect, as far as I know, to be made a member of ISHRE, and I continue to be a member today. And that was fantastic, because here you could see that a person is locating himself not as a, let us say, not as a soldier minding the professional community, but as a soldier taking the professional community into the real world. That's what you could see in him.
Yeah, sure, Kevin. I know you can speak for at least an hour on him.
Yeah, so fantastic.
Yeah.
I just want to add one more wonderful thing about him. Every now and again, every 2 or 3 months, I would be making a request of him, seeking some information, some data. And he had this way of writing everything in capital letters in his little notepad. Everything would be written in capital letters, and very promptly, he would write it down. Instructions would be given, and not once did he not respond to what I was asking for. And I was able to carry that information forward into conferences and representations, taking the body of knowledge that he was able to provide for me. At a wave of a hand, he would get it for me.
I know.
So I was ever grateful to him.
Okay. Payal, 20 seconds for you, Payal.
5 seconds.
Okay, go.
Further to what Ashokji said, actually the book that he wrote, The Path of Green, was literally written from beginning to end just like that. There's not a single line he has cut, not a single para that has been, it's all handwritten. He wrote it by hand. We, of course,
I want to ask you something else, Payal. You're hearing all these people. How much of all this of your dad you knew actually?
Oh, I did know a lot of this.
Yeah.
I did. I mean, all my whole life I've spent with him. So I did know a lot of these things. But of course, there are so many new things that I hear, that I am hearing today.
Yeah. Payal, did you know he loved yellow dal and rice?
Yes, that I definitely know. I think that everybody here knows.
And vanilla ice cream and fruit salad.
And on gulab jamun, if it was one special.
Debashish, you were no more than maybe 22 or 23 when you first met him?
No, I was 21.
21.
And when you're talking about everybody's first meeting, I still remember I came to meet Payal, and it was GK2 home. And, I was going out actually. I was done with the conversation with Payal, and I was moving out. And there he just, got off his car and coming in. So Payal just said, meet this is Debashish, and he's from BHU. So that is how we connected. And then once he said, oh, andar aiye. Then we once again sat on the dining table and we spoke for, I know he had so many questions, how BHU is now, this and that. And then I don't know, to me, I met so early, and to me, he was almost like a father. And we shared so much personal things, every day. So when people are talking about fear, this, that, to me, he was like a father. So I would walk into him anywhere, wherever he is in a GK2 or in any office. And then evenings, because we were working out of GK2, he would come back from office, and then we'll sit and, talk, have dinner, lunch. And then many tours, me, Payal, auntie, uncle went to Banaras twice, and then many places. So fond memories. And it's like, I don't know, what do you talk about your father? He was
When you didn't have a driver, and he suddenly decided that he will pick up a
that
telephone.
happened many times. That happened many times.
That was the case, doctor, for everybody in my team. Everybody. He would make sure everybody was taken.
Debashish, I want to hear you say that to the rest of us.
Sorry?
No, I want you to tell the story, I said.
No, I think, what I'm saying that, for the smallest thing, driver was still big. I remember it was 1994 and I was, we had a fashion show coming up and I was, I stayed at GK2 house only and upstairs and I was working at night. So around 10:30, he came up with his one set of kurta pajama. And he said, Debashish, आप रात को ये पहन लीजिएगा, ये थोड़ा छोटा है, आपके लिए छोटा होगा, लेकिन आप ये पहन लीजिएगा, because you came from office and you're working, you're going to stay tonight. So that is how, I don't know what to say. That is how he was.
Yeah, he was like that. He was like
smaller,
that. Kamal Mittal, you know him for a long time. There was one day he was telling me last year that if he was, he was actually sort of accusatory of Dr. Jain passing away at the time he did. Because a whole lot of things, Kamalji, I'm talking for you now, a whole lot of things Kamalji had set in store for that wonderful property that he has in Delhi. Dr. Jain had told him, you don't worry, you just leave it to me, I'm going to make this happen for you. And then he passes. He leaves you bereft, Kamalji. He leaves you thinking, why on earth has he done this to me? You tell us the story.
Okay, I will start with the, the last episode which you mentioned. He took responsibility for my house. He said, it is my house I'm constructing and you don't worry. And an example was this. The architect quoted a fee. And this architect has been more a liaison architect. And he quoted a fee to do the job. So Premji said that, look, NDMC is the biggest hurdle. So it's good that you have an architect who can handle NDMC. So be it. Now we wanted to get into the engineering part of it. And we asked Ashish to give a quote. He gave a quote which was twice the price of the architect's quote. So I showed it to him and I said, what should I do? He said, you can't do this. You can't pay the engineering guy twice what you pay the architect. The architect has to be paid twice what you have to pay to the engineering guy.
I know, yeah.
So I said, okay, but what do I do now? Should I ask him to double his fee and pay him? He said, no, don't do that. We'll see. You don't worry about it. I'll handle it. I said, fine.
No, not into the detail. I want to know what it has meant to you to not have him in these times in your life.
No. The reason is that I considered him to be somebody whom I trusted 100% or 110%. And this takes me back to
3 generations he stayed with you, right?
Mid-80s, 84, 85, 86, somewhere then, at Paharpur Business Center. My father-in-law told me that, look, I do business with Blue Star. I know the family. I do business with Voltas. And I know them very, very well. And if I give the air conditioning contract to Blue Star or Voltas, the other one will be very unhappy. So I'm going to leave this entire business to Dr. Jain, whom I trust, and you give your inputs to him, but it will be his decision as to what he does.
Nice.
And he can give the contract to whomever he wishes to. I have nothing to say. I will not get involved. I will not even change the cost or the order 1 paisa here and there. So he left it 100% to Dr. Jain. That was the first time I met him. So I spent time with him and I said, well, why not have free air cooling? So he said, fine, let me think about it. I asked him, why can't we have chilled water done at night and stored so that we can use it during the day because there are so many power cuts every day. So I said, okay. And he implemented both these and he placed the order. It went to Blue Star.
No. Beyond the detail, Kamalji, what is it that you remember of the man and what is it that you miss of the person?
Well, look, as far as the person is concerned, I had 100% trust. When I was doing the Green Spaces project, about 500 crores.
Everyone says that, absolutely.
I said the same thing to him.
I got that. Sorry, Kamalji, for want of time, we have so many more people who have to speak and who have so much to share with us. Samir Sinha, your first time, 20 years ago.
Thank you. Thank you, Hari, and thank you, Payalji, for this opportunity. I really look forward to this interaction every year. It's such a fond remembering Dr. Jain. My interaction, like you said, was nearly 30 years ago. And it was a meeting where Dr. Jain had come to my office to pitch for a project that we were starting. I had walked into the meeting thinking I'm meeting this MVP consultant from Delhi. So it'll be a good short 15-minute meeting. I'll be done with it. The meeting lasted nearly 3 hours. And not only that, it had such a profound impact on all of us that we have never built anything non-green since then. And he got me involved in what he said was we thought it was a green movement, but it's actually a green revolution.
Samir, what did he say in that meeting that converted you into a green professional?
So that meeting, like I said, it was, so, his personality was such that any meeting that we would have where, like, architects get very agitated, developers have a very, very different viewpoint on budgets, and we would be very agitated in a meeting, and then Dr. Jain would walk in and suddenly everything would calm down. And he would have this effect where you could actually find solutions to very complicated problems with a smile on his face, and everybody accepted it. And it was an amazing experience working with him, and that is what I remember.
That's still a little general. In that one meeting, I know this happened to you, Samir. That's why I'm asking you, in the interest of everyone listening to you on this. Things that he said in that meeting changed the way you look at how you build. Yes, Samir, I think your network is low.
Doing this.
Sorry,
couldn't hear that.
I never mind. We'll come back to you, Samir.
I'll just add there, since you spoke about Samir.
Yes, Ashish.
I keep intervening because I know
you should.
I know the backstory of most of the the things that take place.
Right.
So Dr. Jain, at Spectral was a big company. We were about 500 people plus, and we were doing maybe at any given point of time 700 to 800 projects.
Yes.
Now, it was not possible for Dr. Jain to handle every project. It's not possible for any human being.
Got it. Right.
But there were few projects where he himself went and he himself led them. And that was purely the basis of the relationship that he carried with the people. Samir was one of them. Samir's project was handled personally by Dr. Jain. And that's what, every time he used to come back from the meeting, he used to speak about Samir.
Got that.
Thank you. Hari, just one line I wanted to add.
Yes,
give me one more minute.
Yeah.
So I was telling you about the story where I was driving with him in the car to Gandhinagar, and I asked him, what drives you? And he told me very simply that, at the end of it, we will all be stories. Lekin kahani interesting honi chahiye. And that is what remains with me even till today, that the story that we leave behind has to be interesting. And so to that point, I just wanted to say that we do this every year. If there's one person who deserves the Padma Shri or the Padma Bhushan, it is Dr. Prem Jain. And we should all lobby to take that legacy to make that happen. I think that should be the one takeaway. If all of us can resolve, we must try and do that. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Fair enough. Thank you. Thank you, Samir. Mr. Ajay Poddar, I know you have gone several times to his house, a festival, and you would be there. Tell us of some such recount and the impact he made on you, Mr. Poddar. No, you're muted. You're muted. You have to turn your system on. Okay, while he does that, should we move to?
Yeah. I didn't know him for very long, like almost all of you did, and I was not as fortunate. But I would say that for the 6-7 years that I knew him, there was a personal bond, and he evoked complete trust. In fact, when he asked me to, he said, "Why don't you become a member of IGBC, a
I
founder
remember.
member of IGBC,
We got that.
and you have to pay 5 lakhs."
Yeah. Right.
So I said, okay. So one of the people, one of the very illustrious members asked me that, "Why did you pay 5 lakhs?" I said, "I paid 5 lakhs because he asked me to." And I'm absolutely, there is no second thought or there is no question about it. The other thing which I want to say to this, all of you, is he told me that, you know, I have done something, but if everybody in IGBC, I think 50% of the people in IGBC they agree with me, they respect me, everything, but they don't really understand what I want to do. And if that had been understood 80-90%, I would have done much more.
There is Gurmeet sitting here. There is V. Suresh sitting here. They all know what you're saying. We are in good hands.
Yes. So, of course, and that is why his legacy, because he inspired so many people. And just one last thing, that at a very personal level, he would never be, with his knowledge and experience, he was so curious, he was like a child. So whatever the new things which I was trying to do, he would take great interest, understand, he implemented in his house, in his office, in his various things. And he would never be condescending and tell me, "I think this is the way you should do it." He would always try to evoke you to think and to improve. So these are, and at a personal level with music, he would suddenly call up, "Come to the house, Renu ji and you, and we will do music together." So, it was a great, I miss him, and it's been a great bond. Thank
And
you.
how was that? Tell us about maybe in the next 30 seconds, the session, music, and the evening. What did that mean to you? And how different was it?
It was so spontaneous. Because it was very spontaneous. It was not planned. It was not like he would call 10 people. It was every interaction of his with me and with this thing was like family, like one-to-one. He said, "You are family." So it's nothing, to do with
You're
any
absolutely right.
formality. So
you are family.
he
Every
gave
one
me,
of us knows that. He said this to almost everybody. That's a unique thing about him. Everybody went back thinking he was special. So he did that to everyone.
Doctor,
And
can
he
you
didn't.
ask Somani Saab to speak? I know he's
I
not.
know Somani and Suresh. I'm keeping them for the last pile.
Okay.
Because those are people who have a lot more to say.
He was the first to join, so I just don't.
I know. Fair enough. I because these are people who are, who have a lot more insights to offer. I thought I'll get to Mala Singh. She's among only 4 women today in this whole thing. It seems to be like a man's word still.
We have both the
Mala and then Jeet Kumar probably, and then Sheila Shetty. Sorry, you were saying, Payal?
Sheetal Shetty. No, that's fine. That's fine. I said we have 4 of us here.
Yeah, 4. That's what I said. Yeah, 4. Yeah, Mala.
Yeah. So I think I should say just in one sentence, whatever I am today, and the success I have received in the green building industry. So dear Dr. Jain has played very, very important role in my life, because when I had met him 20 years ago, I remember that he called me to join IGBC. Then always, whenever I meet him, I feel like I'm meeting my father. It was like he was like my family, even your family members, my husband, my children. So we always felt, like we are not meeting the chairperson of IGBC, but something so humble and, something you want to learn, you want to, get inspiration and encouragement. So I think whatever I am as a green entrepreneur, the industry success, I owe it to Dr. Jain. I am because of him in the green building industry, and he deserves that thing because he has given me that empowerment, I would say.
Jeet Kumar Gupta,
And he
Sheetal
expressed
Shetty
his
after
love
that.
on a leaf for Mala.
Yeah, I remember.
At Pragati Resorts, he wrote on a leaf
Yes.
with
his
all my love
autograph.
to Mala, and he signed on it. And
Yes, on the leaf itself. Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you, Gurmeet for
Yes.
reminding such a beautiful memory.
See, these are the
Yeah.
small fine. JK, after that, Sheetal Shetty. JK.
Thank you, Hari. I think it's very difficult to define the relationship with Ms. Jain because I never knew IGBC. I never knew anybody in the IGBC itself. In fact, it was 20th of April 2014 when Chandigarh chapter was being inaugurated, and he was the chief guest. He came for inauguration, and he was speaking, and we were all invited. Anybody, architects were invited. Please come and see the inauguration. I had nothing to do with IGBC. I never knew IGBC at all. So I was there. I attended it, and there were, of course, there were all presentation and lectures with Ms. Jain also being the chief guest. And there I asked 2 questions. He narrated that we have to do this for promoting the green building, incentivize, etc., etc. And in the end, I explained already these issues have been addressed by the government, etc. So that is what, I never met them and never talked to them. And after a week, I get from a call from Raghu. Could you be the co-chairman of the Chandigarh chapter? And I was shocked, how I could be picked up as that, But after that, I was appointed as the co-chairman. And then after 2 years, I took as the chairman. But I did ask Raghu, how was I picked up? He said, Ms. Jain was the man, When you asked 2 questions, he said, he's the gentleman, catch him. And that's what the one I got inducted in this.
Pure instinct, pure
Secondly, secondly, I could see whenever we were bringing out a newsletter from Chandigarh chapter, he was the one who will write a forward for us all the time. There was a message all the time coming. And there was incident, one of my colleague was there in the Manav Rachana University. He was heading the architecture department. And I requested, can you set up a student chapter? He agreed, and I sent a proposal to the IGBC headquarters that, the center in the Manav Rachana University should be set up, a student chapter. Immediately I get a response. How the hell you are bothered? You are in Chandigarh, you can't intervene in this, It's a Delhi chapter which have to do that. There was a controversy. And I get a call from Mr. Jain. Jeet, go ahead. Let the chapter be started. I will be there that day to inaugurate the chapter. Go ahead, And that was the case. And he said, you have to be there. And I went to, despite all that, I went from Chandigarh to Faridabad, and Mr. Jain personally came. And I could see the aura, he was speaking to the university students, and the management was so impressed, and that started a new kind of chapter. I also remember one thing, he was so committed. He was so focused. Like we had a problem in IGBC, this Haryana, government. They were not including IGBC for, granting the concession in the green building. They were only stuck up at Greha. He asked me, Jeet, we have to fight it out and we have to make sure it happens, And he said, I'll come and lead. I know at that time, Mr. Suresh and Mr. Jain came together, and we went and met the chief secretary,
Got that. And I know the wonderful stories we all have. Thanks, Tyag. I know you have to leave. Nice that you found the time to be with us.
It's all, he was a teacher. He had very few words, but the message was so personal. I still can't get out of it.
I got that. Sheetal Shetty, after you, I will ask Sheetal to speak, Sheetal Rakeja to speak. Sheetal Shetty?
Yeah, good evening, Dr. Hari. Thank you, Payal, for this opportunity. I've heard so much from the other speakers about Dr. Prem Jain's expertise in his work. I will be unable to speak about that because I think I've just met him a little more over a decade. And I've got wonderful memories of that decade. I think whatever I would speak was more of my personal relationship with Dr. Jain. I must thank Mr. R.K. Somani for introducing me to Dr. Jain at the Plumbex. And he made it a point, I'm sure Mr. Somani is here, and I must thank him now on this platform. He
Very
made it
much here.
yeah, he made it a point to come back to our booth and say, "You've still not met Dr. Jain. I told you to." And I very sheepishly told him that I don't know who's Dr. Jain, because we are just 2 issues old in washrooms and beyond. This is way back in 2011, February of 2011. And then he introduced me to Dr. Jain and at the Plumbeck show. And after that, there was no looking back. What appealed to me most about Dr. Jain was the fact that he could cut across all hierarchies. Like how somebody else mentioned, that for him, his way of speaking would never change with anybody. We were basically, I would like to believe that I was very young 10 years ago, and to have somebody of that experience with Dr. Jain had to even, invite us to his office when I wrote to him after the Plumbeck show was heartening. And the moment I went to his office, I think that comfort level which I found with him, in the first one-on-one meeting was amazing. Anurag Yadav, a consulting editor, was with us. And he had that personality where I think I could be myself. And trust me, knowing the kind of person I am, Dr. Jain has made me change a few things. Anybody else other than him, I wouldn't even listen to. Like, for example, we had an event in Delhi called Smart Green Sanitation for Smart Green Cities. The name was actually Smart Sanitation for Smart Cities, and he insisted put the name green. And I was like, why? Then he said, no, this should be green. And I was like, all right. And I had the nerve to tell him, it's only because you're saying I'm doing it. Otherwise, I wouldn't, So every project after Washington and Beyond, whether it was WB Honors, or whether it was the Urban Sanitation Magazine, or it was the Smart Green Sanitation event, or it was Lightworks or anything, he was one of the first persons whom we would go and just talk to. Jaise mandir mein matha tek ke aate hai na, for me it was that. And I think in the last decade, I have also evolved. Maybe we must have met just 3 or 4 or 5 times in a year. But that 1 to 2 hour meeting was something which we could take back with us. A lot of moments, a lot of understanding, and he had a lot of patience to deal with somebody like me. I think a lot of patience, and he exactly knew that you can judge a book by its cover.
Yeah.
And he had the understanding to know what is the cover and what is the book.
I know. He was one person you could never say no to. Like you say, I get that.
I'm one person who can say no immediately, but I couldn't say no.
Yeah. Okay. I know. Thanks, Sheetal. Now I turn to the other Sheetal because her husband has also got to go for a meeting. I'm sure she's got to join him. After that, I'll come to Rajesh and Shom, then Samani Saab and Suresh. Sheetal.
Good evening, everyone. It's really heartwarming to hear all of this about Dr. Jain.
Yeah.
His smile was so endearing. It still is. You look at this picture right here, and it just, calms you down. So I recall 2 incidences. I've seen him in the toughest of early years of my career, seen him in the toughest of meetings and toughest of clients, and just smiling, and like no one could say no to him. And I do recall, I was the youngest in that meeting, and there was some idea I was trying to throw in that tough meeting, and no one was kind of giving me an ear. He was he picked it up and he put that idea across, saying that, just let's hear her out. Always very encouraging. And, the client actually took that idea. So, and that happened a couple of times. He would if you're trying to say something, even if you're the youngest or you're talking stupid, he would still give you an ear and encourage. The second is when the National Building Code was, the clauses, sustainability chapter was being written. So he asked me to, put across, to be the, convener for one of the clauses. And I told him, Dr. Jain, I have no idea about this. While, of course, as an architect, I'm designing buildings, it was about materials. So the all stalwarts are here, and I really don't know how will I do it? And he would make everything be so easy. He said, doesn't matter, be their assistant, let them do the work. You can just join it. I said, Acha, theek hai. I couldn't say no, so I joined that. I became part of that group. But in the end, no one did anything. Although stalwarts were sitting, I kept I was consistently following up. And we were the last ones to, actually put that chapter across. And they did nothing, and I had to do the entire thing, and I was not confident. And I told him, Dr. Jain, I've done all the work, but I'm totally clueless. And I'm not confident that this is correct. Again, he put everything very simply. doesn't matter, float this thing across and I'm sure you'll get through. And if they're not answering, don't worry, we'll send it across. So he would make everything so simple. It was always, I felt that, he was like a father figure, always guiding, always encouraging, and always smiling and make everything so simple and so pleasant. So
it's anecdotal, but significant, how it also changes the way, he gave you back to yourself in some way.
Yes,
right?
yes.
That's what he did to people, I will turn to Rajesh, then to Som. Let me, I want you to also remember that just the people who we were today, about 25 of us, I was just doing a mental math on it, and you're all very good at these things. You're all pushing, driving, influencing investments of over 30,000 crores a year. All of you in your different ways. I'm just doing some math on it. Keep that in mind. Rajesh.
Thank you, Payalji and Hari, for inviting me.
Rajesh is doing a 100 crore project just now, for instance. Go on. Yeah, Rajesh.
All paying glowing tributes to Jainji. I wish I had known him earlier.
I know.
I first met Dr. Jainji during the IGBC chapter inauguration at Coimbatore in 2010.
Yeah.
And after hearing him and meeting him, I knew that he is a person with so much passion and vision. But after the meeting, I told him, Jainji, mere ko kuch bhi malum nahi hai green building. Then Mr. C.R. Swaminathan was there. He was the former chief of South India.
I remember, yeah.
To take up this position. Then Jainji said, Rajeshji, don't worry, there's a committee meeting in Bombay. I will talk to you.
Okay.
After a few months. Then in Bombay during the meeting, he pulled me aside and he gave me a lot of insights. And it is thanks to him that whatever knowledge I have, it is because of Dr. Jain sir. Dr. Jainji had that glow and aura in his face always, which always sent out very positive signals, and he always had a word of encouragement. I used to make it a point to seek his blessings whenever we met during the Congress or the executive board meeting. Yeah. And he'll always ask, Rajesh, mein aapke liye kuch chahiye, anything I can do. I said, Aapka Ashirwad bas hai. And I always used to appreciate the simplicity, positivity, and the humbleness.
Nice, very nice. So I'll put it like this to you. You spent nearly 15 or 20 years with the Builders Association, various other industry associations. And then somewhere along the line, IGBC came in, and crossed paths with you. And what has that meant to you?
See, I've been credit the national.
No, Rajesh, I was asking our Somsekhar on that.
Yeah. Good evening. Good evening. Thank you very much for inviting me to share whatever thoughts I had on Dr. Premji. I knew him for a very short time since we opened our IGBC chapter in Mysore. Probably he visited us in Mysore for 3 times.
Yes.
When we first opened the chapter. Second, when we had the opening of the 12 student chapters at a time, Premji was there. He was so fond of student chapters and always disseminating knowledge and education has been his passion. One thing he always cherished after visiting Mysore after opening the chapter, before opening the chapter, we took him for the darshan of goddess Chamundeshwari, who is the goddess for this town and goddess for the legend of the royal family, Mysore, very famous. He was
I was there with you, I think, at the time, right?
Yes. He could closely take the darshan and
I heard so much about it, by the way. I heard, he came back and went on and on and on talking about that experience in that particular chapter. I heard a lot about it, I must say that to you.
In fact, he wanted to bring the whole family for this darshan once, but unfortunately we could not get it. But still, it's open. We invite all of you to come sometime and have a darshan of
Somani Saab, your turn, and after that we will get the last word from our.
Thank you very much for allowing me to share what he meant to me. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Thank you, Payalji and Hari, for giving this opportunity. I came to know Dr. Jain in a conference that we had in PhD chamber on water. He was one of the speakers, one among 3. One was a professor from IIT Delhi himself, and the third person I don't remember. It was some 27, 28 years ago. And while he was speaking at the end, I asked the president to allow me 2 minutes. I said, Dr. Jain, you're talking so much about water. What about saving waters in closets? He says, it's a good subject. I said, if you find the time after the meeting, I'll show you what we have done in Indware to prove to you what we are doing to save water.
Okay.
And that was the first time I met him, and I saw such a humble person with so much knowledge, down-to-earth person. And from that day onwards, I considered him to my elder brother. He came with me, I showed him what we had done. That point of time, the flushing was 15 liters per minute. Potable water, we don't get enough water to drink, and we were flushing it out. So I had made 6x3. After 2 years of getting the product inside the system to be developed in India, I didn't want to import. And when I showed him that, he said, wonderful. Now look at something that you can do even lesser. So
Right.
a baby closet, I had 1.5 liter flush.
Yes. But how old are you now, Samaniji, if I may ask?
How old I am?
Yes.
I was about 22 months younger to him.
Okay.
So he has his January 26, 36. And I have 10 November 1937.
Oh, wow. That's it.
84
Brilliant.
plus.
Wow.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
Thank
Now
you.
we're done to Sureshji. The last word is yours.
We have Gaurav. After Sureshji, I will ask Gaurav to.
I know Gaurav is there. Gaurav, I've been thinking of Gaurav for some time. Actually, we must get Gaurav to speak. Samaniji, are you done? You want to say anything more?
Yes, I want to say something else.
Sorry.
Then he invited me to his office. And when I took a time out and went to there, I thought I'll spend about an hour or so, but I spent 4 hours. And Ashish took me around. That is the time I understood what green building was. At the end of it, I said, in a meeting, I said, Dr. Saab, I'm promising one thing. Every new factory that I'll make will be platinum rated. Since then, we have made 2, a third one is coming up, platinum rated.
How amazing. How amazing.
I promised him, and as long as I'm alive and active, I will continue to be that.
That's another 20 years easily, Samaniji.
But I will not be able to work by then. I have plenty of health problems.
Oh, no, you don't have any health problems. That is not bad. Gaurav, you got to speak. I wanted to hold you for the last because I know you'll come up with something really powerful.
Let's have Sureshji speak, Doctor, first, and then Gaurav can.
Okay, wonderful. Sureshji, you have to unmute. Sorry.
You're on mute.
Sureshji, you have to unmute. No, you're muted.
Sureshji, unmute.
Yeah. I said I'll wait for Gaurav to speak.
Because you'll be able to respond better, I thought, Sureshji, if you don't mind. Because Gaurav will say something and I know you will reflect nicely on it.
That's
Yes?
right. Yeah.
Gaurav. Are you there, Gaurav? Yeah.
Yes, I'm there, sir. So really, I don't have anything with me which I can convey in words. So I just want to say that Dr. Jain is always, I feel his presence in my life. This is just I wish to say.
God bless. Thank you. Suresh.
Good. Thank you, Hari. Thank you, Payal. Thank you, Renuji, for calling me for this evening. There's always an evening with Dr. Jain Saab, who is living with us, amidst us, with all his spirit all around us. That's the way I feel, having been, even though we lost him around 3.5 years back. But that's it. But around mid-80s, I had met him over there. 85 is the time period of the calendar there, working together in a very large way on the NBC related work, because I was the vice chairman, connected, especially air conditioning and heating chapter is an area where we want to get the expertise rightly. And we got him very the chapter on part 8, section 3, of bringing the latest provision that we had from US as well as Israel and Indian conditioning industry, want to have a realistic document to come on that. And we're very happy that, and his association continues, that we are still not filled that particular one of the chairman for that particular panel there. And that really built us continuously meeting in various fora, especially to push through this agenda of this new versions, etc., coming in that. Of course, once in NBC, right from the beginning, once in the IGBC, right from the beginning, we were there together, right from the starting point activity there. And once he took over as the chairman, was very happy to be associated as the one for policy, advocacy, and governance related work, and associated very closely. But I think 4 or 5 very significant things we got to really place on record. That's where the vision of the great man is. To make an organization, because handholding, what Clinton said, you should come, whatever, and whatever Padu point of make indigenous, don't make our rating system a surrogate city. You want Bangalore, go to Baltimore. You want to Calcutta, you go to Cincinnati. So we require our own condition for India's geoclimatological conditions of temperature, humidity, 95% clear design sky as against standard overcast sky over there, to make that all rating based on that. And I think that route to make all our rating in line with the Indian conditions, the credit has to go to his inspiration of Indian and do that particular. First as that. Second one was which very briefly mentioned by Paddu, was the real problem that we had with USGBC. The week over there, to conveniently told that nothing to worry, we'll do our own, and we thought that in case of USGBC will fail, but and the third area was, of course, the issue related to the rating, where the Terry was telling, both Pachori as well as Ajay Mathu was telling that theirs is the India's rating, namely Terry Graha. We demolished that myth because we clarified very clearly, and then